Hello and welcome to the SC Playbook Big Bash podcast, the first of the BBL 15 pre-season, proudly brought to you by Mortgage Choice SCW. I'm your host, Tim Williams, and I'm fired up for a big summer of cricket. Of course, it's the summer of the Ashes Down Under, and what we're here to talk about is the Big Bash, and in particular, the Supercoach Big Bash season incoming. Now, I'm fired up, but there's a bloke who has been jittery basically since the last ball of the last summer of cricket. It is Cricket Australia commentator Max Bryden. Maxie, how are you, mate?
G'day, Timo. Look, mate, I'm a simple man. I like my weather hot, my beer cold, and my cricket on. So we are in this beautiful nexus at the moment where all of those things are possible. We've had some of the best domestic cricket so far that I can remember in recent memory, with the One Day Cup, the Sheffield Shield season, with the WBBL kicking off this weekend as well, and then the big ticket items, the Ashes and the BBL, not far away, mate. So I am humming.
Yeah, Maxie, we'll talk about it more on the Cricketers Playbook podcast to be recorded next week, our general look at cricket sort of things there. But has there been more interest in the start of a domestic season in Australia than this year, with so many positions genuinely on the line heading into the Ashes? You add in to the fact that Pat Cummins, who will miss a test or two and is in doubt for stages of that series. So there are bowling spots to be on. We know the Australian top order, it's a shambles. It's been a genuine shootout. We saw Jake Weatherald named in the squad, Sammy Konstas missing out yesterday. But how good's the start of the domestic season been?
Oh, it's the best. And I think that it just really goes to show that cricket and cricket journalism and coverage and chatter, like, they just go hand in hand. Like, there aren't that many sports where you get to stop between each action, right? Like, every single time the bowler lets one amazing delivery go, you got 30 seconds to talk about how good or awful it was before the next ball's bowled. The chat has been absolutely immense. And as for someone who likes to talk about cricket, it's just been absolutely heaven. The thing that I like about it as well is you start to know in amongst your friends who are the cricket people. You start to know when you go to work who are the cricket people, and you start to sound each other out, just kind of weigh up what the selectors are doing, give your own opinion on things as well. So, man, it just doesn't get anything better.
Yeah, as someone who likes cricket, that is one of the great understatements of all time for you, Maxie. Now, before we get into the nitty-gritty and the Supercoach chat, I said we'll keep it brief. We're going to save this extended chat for the Cricketers Playbook podcast next week, but Sam Konstas misses out. Jake Weatherald in. Right or wrong decision?
I like it. I think that we've learned anything in the last couple of years, particularly with these guys who are on the fringe, form's important. Like, skill's fine, but when there's no pedigree to speak of, like, you really have to lean into form lines. And I think if they were to pick Konstas and try and give him that opportunity to figure it out at the highest level, you're probably just setting him up for failure. Weatherald's had a really, really strong 12 months. When you turn the clock back, his domestic career it's probably 8 or 9 years old at the moment so far. And he's had some really, really big moments. And I think he is the hot hand, and I think he's got what it takes. Where if he's going to be called upon, he's going to do have a really good account of himself.
Yeah, I'm with you, mate. And not to say that Sammy Konstas won't feature in the upcoming Ashes series, but as I said, you need runs on the board. You need form coming into a series with, so much riding on it. So Jakey Weatherald, one of the great stories. Again, we'll touch on that more next week. Now, Maxie, to prove that we're not complete, absolute spuds when it comes to Supercoach BBL, or maybe we will. I don't know how your recent years have gone. I know they're not as good as mine, but look, you're only human. Mate, how have your recent Supercoach Big Bash seasons gone?
Yeah, I think to kind of set the context right, last year I had my worst season ever, and it was the first time in 10 seasons that I finished outside the top 1,000. So we like to set our standards high. Now, my highest ever finish is 330th, but I'm always there or thereabouts within the 3-figure mark. So I'm still hanging on for that big finish, but that's typically because, unlike you, I don't play with my Safety Sam hat on. I like to take some really, really big swings, and if I'm up near that, near the pointy end of the rankings, I will absolutely go for broke. And
Firstly, Maxie, Safety Sam works in all codes, and you can give me all you want, but results do the speaking. I'll continue to bet you year after year. Secondly, and I'm putting you on the spot here, who's a player that comes to mind that couldn't quite crack a century, or, they might have had centuries, but they were just notorious for getting out in the 90s, falling just short of the mark? Because that's you in Supercoach Big Bash. You are as consistent as they come, give or take last year, but just haven't had that big finish just yet, have you?
No, mate. And look, if you want to compare me to Michael Slater in that sense, the man who's been out in the 90 more than most, look, I'll take it, right, because he's still got a baggie. and he's still one of the great hosts of the footy show of all time. But no, man, and that's the thing. And that's why we keep coming back, because we're chasing those really big finishes. And I think that's another great thing about this podcast is you get the light and shade here. You're going to get the calm and measured approach from Timothy over there. And you're going to get a bit of emotion. You're going to get a lot of eye test, a lot of vibe, stats and stuff like that. But look, I like to think I know what I'm doing. And this preseason so far, I've already found a bunch of gems for my round one team. So I'm really, really excited for this preseason.
Yeah, it's funny when we talk about like those familiar with the SC Playbook NRL podcast that we do, and in that one I'm probably very eye test based. You go very heavy on the stat. You love your NRL and I love my cricket just as much as each other, but when it comes to cricket, I probably lean into the stats a little bit more, whereas you lean into your heart and the eye test and that sort of thing. And, you know, there's room for both, mate. For myself, a good season last year. I finished 314th overall. I was actually going back through my results the other day, and you forget about your Big Bash results pretty quickly. Yeah. And I was sitting 140th going into the last round, and I had an absolute barrier. I don't think I owned Mitch Owen or someone who went ballistic like that.
Glenn Maxwell and Mitch Owen both went huge in that final round. Maxwell went huge for like the final 5 rounds, and that was really the difference between me finishing 500th and outside the top 1,000.
Yes, there you go. So 314th last year after a barrier of a final round. The year before, I like to think of it as an outlier. I had a pretty ordinary year, definitely outside the top 1,000. I was about 4,000 or something. It was an absolute shocker. BBL 12, though, 270th overall. And I think it was my best finish back in BBL 11, 43rd overall. So what's that? 3 out of 4 good years, 1 shocker in there. So not too bad. Guys, on today's show, Supercoach Big Bash 101, the fundamentals. We're going to be looking at some of the basics of Supercoach, some key strategies that you need to implement, including loopholing and how to do that. Very, very important part of the game. Not as daunting as it sounds. We're going to look at some fixture analysis, the teams with the best and worst draws to start the Supercoach Big Bash season. Then we're going to have a look at some of the must-haves for round one, largely based around those the teams with the early double game weeks. Again, we'll get to all that very shortly. SC Playbook Unlimited League is live, guys. The code for that is 621897. Take on the SC Playbook team for a chance to win $500 in cash. We're giving away $500 to the top-ranked subscriber that can knock us all off. If a non-subscriber wins it, we're going to give $250 to the winner and then $250 to the top-ranked subscriber that knocks us off. Now, what's in store for BBL 15? Stick with me through this because it is important. We have had some changes at SC Playbook in recent times. We're going to have all the same good gear as we did in recent years, but the expansions have come in thick and fast. We've created standalone cricket channels, separate from the channel we've used in the past, which also houses our NRL content. So just to make things a little bit simpler to track and you don't get lost in stuff that you're not keen on. So we have cricket exclusive channels on YouTube, which this show is now live on Apple and Spotify. So follow and subscribe to those. Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, standalone cricket channels. I'll repeat myself for about the next 3 months that we have changed them up. And if you found the podcast, you've probably worked it out by now, to be fair. We're going to have our weekly preseason podcast and a new episode every round of the season. Also, as I said, live on YouTube throughout the year. We're going to have our weekly Q&A podcast taking questions from the SC Public subscribers. That'll be beginning later on in the month. We're going to have tons of long-form articles on the site at scpublic.com.au from our team of contributors, past champions, Andrew Langley, the dual champion, one of the greatest super coaches of all time. Plenty of that already online now. Guys, our subscription package is available for less than $2 per week. That's a third of your daily cup of coffee. It gets you access to all our premium articles on site, our major unlimited league cash prize, access to our WhatsApp community with late mail groups to keep you up to date, contributor-only chats where I'll drop our trades, skippers, team advice, all that sort of stuff. And you can chat alongside the SC Playbook community in there as well. It'll also, that subscription, get you access to all of our NRL, NBA, EPL, and NFL content across the network. So, guys, if that tickles your fancy and you want to subscribe, head to scplaybook.com.au and click subscribe in the menu. All those other sports that I mentioned, standalone channels. So go and check them out if you're interested in those sports. Now, Maxi, enough of my dribbling. Let's get stuck into the good stuff. Supercoach Big Bash 101, the fundamentals. You know, more seasoned Supercoach players, they'll be largely around a lot of these sorts of things, but the strategy involved is important as well. But certainly for those that are a bit newer to Supercoach or need a bit of a refresher on how it all works and how you can, you know, maximize your rank by the end of the season or win your leagues, whatever it might be. Each week, you'll pick 10 players in your starting team, or 11, 5 batsmen, 5 bowlers, 1 wicket keeper, and then you'll have a flex as well. We'll get to the flex shortly. You also have reserves in each position as well, but the starting players in your team from that 12, they will be the ones that score towards your weekly total. You have dual position players. So you might have someone like Glenn Maxwell who can bat and can bowl. You can switch these dual players between positions. So keep an eye on that one. Wicket keeper, batsman, of course, in there as well. Your captaincy choice each week will score 2 times points. Your vice captain will just score regular. That's there in case your captain doesn't play, in which case your vice captain doubles up. Now, Maxie, I'll throw to you for the flex position. This one was announced last year, and I think it was a hit amongst pretty well all super coaches out there. Certainly myself. I love it. It was introduced to NRL this year as well. Can you explain to people what the flex position is in Supercoach BBL?
Absolutely. It works very much in the same way that it does in the NRL and AFL versions of the game, whereby it will allow you to select a player from any position and stash them into the flex spot on your team. But more than that, it also will mean that the lowest scoring player from your starting team is going to drop out. So from the 12 players that you've got to field each week, only your highest 11 scorers will count. So the flex is great because not only does it allow you to just have that little bit of extra maneuverability about your trades, and if you want to find an extra batsman, but you've only got a bowler to sell, you can do that through your flex. But more than anything, is really just gets rid of the shocker in your team, which in BBL is amazing. In other versions of the game, that's really about protecting from injury, but in BBL, it's about getting rid of the lowest score in your team.
Yeah, absolutely, mate.
Just got the door, sorry.
Yeah, well summarised, Maxie. And for the most part, as a general rule, you probably want your flex player to be an all-rounder, because in Supercoach, we know that all-rounders are gold. And I don't just mean the players who are listed as dual bat bowl in Supercoach, but players who actually bat, who actually roll the arm over for a few overs. Maybe it's a bowler who bats number 6 or 7. Maybe it's a Mitchell Owen who's starting to bowl a bit as well, or a Glenn Maxwell. These guys basically just given 2 bites of the cherry, because in Supercoach we know that a batsman who doesn't have any other major roles in the game, they go out, they get a first up cracking pill, top of off goes, and they are gone. They don't take a catch in the game. They're not bowling. You're getting 0 points for that player. So the flex is great for that. But bowlers, if you have that player like a Mitchell Owen who the top of off goes, but then he comes out and bowls a couple of overs, they try and hit him out of Bellerive Oval, gets a couple of catches in the deep, you're absolutely laughing. So it's insurance, and these are the players you generally want to target in your team. Now, around the point system, Maxi, we won't get deep into it. The full stats are on the Supercoach site, so go and check them out there. But essentially with batters, obviously you want runs, and the big one there as well is the strike rate bonus. For example, you get 1 point per run. But with the strike rate that comes into it, you have to have scored a minimum of 20 runs. If you score at a strike rate of 160 plus, you get an additional 25 points, and it goes all the way down to 20-point bonuses, 15, 10, to the minimum strike rate bonus of 120 to 129, which is a 5-point bonus. Around the bowling, wickets, obviously, you get 20 points for a wicket. You get points for dot balls. You get points for all sorts of things. Economy rate is probably the big one there. So an economy rate of 4 or less runs per over happens very rarely, but you get 25 points all the way down to, again, an economy rate of 7 to 8 gets you 5 bonus points. Bowler, very important, guys, must bowl a minimum of 3 overs. Maxie, anything to add around that? I've touched on most of it, but all good?
No, I think that it's always worth at this time of season trying to translate that into terms that most people are used to. So if you're coming across from an NRL background, in that version of the game, we talk a lot about base, which is kind of like a baseline score that a lot of players will have as a starting point on like the minimum actions. I really look at the bowlers and the dot balls that they can get as the base numbers. You might have between 5 and 12 in an innings if you're an absolute stud. And having that as a bit of a floor is really, really handy. We talk a lot about bowlers in this version of the game and all-rounders, and those base numbers are really why, because it's much better than scoring like a 15 as a minimum is so much better than scoring a 0 if you go out there as a batsman and get a duck.
Yeah, dot balls, more commonly known to the average cricket fan as Behrendorfs. Jason Behrendorf, a new club this year, won't be seen in the orange of the Scorchers, is it, Maxi?
Yeah, absolutely. First time in his career he's changed clubs. The Renegades have paid big money to get him across. So, good addition.
it's never the regular colour with these Big Bash teams, magentas and all sorts of stuff. It's not just pink. You just need to be really double down. But yeah, one of my favourite players in world cricket, Berendorf. So good to see him getting away from the West and changing things up a little bit. The Canberra boy, actually. Now, this will segue into our next topic quite well, Maxi, but playing the schedule is absolutely pivotal to Supercoach. And if you play the schedule properly, you're probably going to have a relatively decent season no matter how good and bad your picks are, because there'll be a lot out there who won't play the schedule effectively. It is not as daunting or as difficult as it sounds. Now, what I mean by this is that there are teams who have double game weeks. There are some buys loaded in as well, and you need to follow them. We have on the SC Playbook website, on our socials, all over the place, a fixture planner. It's just a chart, and it tells you who's on the double, who's on the buy in each round. It makes it very, very easy to follow. We'll have articles each week to help you out with this so that you don't have to do the deep diving and the digging. That's what we're here for. But Maxie, can you elaborate a little bit on the importance of schedules in Supercoach Big Bash?
I think double game weeks have always made sense to people in the sense that if you played 2 games compared to 1, you've got more opportunities to score points. But probably wasn't really until we started to pick Andrew Langley's brain, aka Goat, aka the 2-time back-to-back BBL champion of Supercoach, that you really just understood the absolute science behind it. We will talk a lot on this podcast in preseason about game involvements, and game involvements are the amount of opportunities that a player has to score points, which only come from either bowlers getting to bowl their minimum 3 overs and get access to those economy rate bonuses, the wicket bonuses, and the wickets. It's fielders who field in hotspots who get catches. It's batsmen who face balls, and it's just plain logic. The higher you bat in the order, the more opportunity that you have to face more balls. The other way to get more game involvements is by playing more games in a single round. So realistically, if you're hardcore and you're fastidious, and what I would encourage everyone to do is load up your team with as many players from the team playing double game weeks as humanly possible, because that's the way to unlock more scoring opportunities. And I would go so far as to say that you can realistically build your round 1 squad with a view to what is happening within the first 3 weeks of the draw and nothing else. And what I mean by that is, if I have a look at some of the teams in the BBL who do not have their double game week until later in the season, I'm talking about the Adelaide Strikers who don't have their double game week until round 7, the Melbourne Renegades who don't have their double game week until round 8. I'm not even entertaining having a single player from their team, despite how good they are, despite how good their role might be, because of the lack of double game week. So when we get to talking about a few of the players that will be must-haves in a round 1 team, 95% of that will come down to guys who have the double game week.
Yeah, the exception to what Maxi's just said, avoiding those players from those teams, is
Glenn Maxwell.
When Matt Short has 2 games in a row coming up on the absolute road that is Adelaide Oval, he's averaging 75 for the tournament. He's bowling 4 overs for the Strikers. He is the exception to these rules because they're an absolute guns. But you're right, Maxi. Like the best of the best in the game, if they don't have any doubles looming, they have to just be in the most ridiculous form of all time to even consider them. So, again, we'll get to that shortly. And that does, as I say, segue into our fixture analysis for BBL 15. Now, as we said, Maxie, there are teams that we want to target who have early double game weeks and no buys and these sorts of things. There are teams we are completely avoiding early on. I think probably the exception to, and I'll jump into it early, but clubs like the Strikers who don't have a double game week until round 7, another club like you mentioned, the Renegades, round 8. Probably the only exception would be, again, maybe Matty Short, but a cheapies. Guys who are set to make a ton of cash and bolster your squad value. You don't necessarily have to play them each week, but cheapies, they're the very, very important one. We've missed one point, and it is an incredibly important point before we get to fixture analysis. Loopholing, Maxi.
Yeah.
Now, this is, I mentioned the importance of fixture analysis, but loopholing, again, not as daunting as it sounds. This where I'm going to unapologetically plug the SC Playbook WhatsApp group and the subscription, but it's not super difficult to follow, but it can be a bit tricky in how to implement the loophole into your team. Now, if you're in this community, not only the contributors from SC Playbook, people within the community, they'll help you do this. If you get your head around loopholing, as well as just playing the fixtures, you're going to have a good Supercoach season. It is as simple as that. Maxi, we'll bounce off each other here because there's a little bit to it. And again, we've got all preseason to explain it and articles and everything. What's loopholing in Supercoach Big Bash?
Yeah, and again, to talk about that translation from versions of the game that most are used to in NRL and AFL coming from the winter months, in those versions of Supercoach, you talk about the guys on your bench that you can highlight in purple as reserves. You can, in those versions of the game, you'll select a number of reserves who will count towards your overall score, just like a bench. But when it comes to BBL Supercoach, reserves isn't the word. It's all about emergencies. And what these people are designed to do from your bench when you highlight them is come on field and replace a score in case there is an injury to your to one of your team members, or they don't play. You can manipulate this system in BBL Supercoach in order to place the emergency on a player who is playing early in the round. It could be a player who is high risk. In the sense that they're a batter only, they don't have that good floor like an all-rounder might have, where they're going to have a lot of game involvements, but they might just be a bit of a mercurial talent. Think of the likes of a Finn Allen from the Perth Scorchers, the New Zealand international, who's at his absolute pomp. He can score centuries in this tournament, but he could also hit one straight up in the air, first ball, and get caught. But you can place the emergency...
Yeah, and just sort of carry on from that. You're in a real flow here, so apologies for stopping you when you're at your best work. But, another guy is like a Jake Fraser-McGurk who, honestly, he could score zero. He probably will score zero because he hasn't got a run in about 3 years. But when Jake Fraser-McGurk goes off, he goes off. Round one, you mentioned Finn Allen for the Scorchers. They play in the first game of the week. Jake Fraser-McGurk and the Renegades, they play in the second game of the week. So these are guys that you could utilise, and it's almost a risk-free sort of crack at them, as opposed to a Melbourne Stars. They don't have a double until round 3, but the first two rounds of the season, they play the last game of the round, which makes it really hard, to pick someone like a Marcus Stoinis, and you don't really get a free crack at them because they don't play early in the round. Anyway, where were we, Maxie?
Well, mate, you always will get in any opportunity to take a jab at Jake Fraser-McGurk. I know that the listeners will know that by now. But yeah, look, I think that, as I said, and as you were saying so rightly, that this really does come down to something that you can take advantage of early in the round. You often need to place the emergency on someone who's playing in that first or second game. It's even an insurance policy that you can take out on guys that you're risking in the double game week. So say, for example, in round 1, we've got the Sydney Sixers and the Hobart Hurricanes. So if you did want to take a chance on a player who could get 2 bites at the cherry, but you're just not quite sure that they've got the form line that you want to trust, you can put them with the reserve on, and if they go well, then you can potentially take their score. Now, how you take their score is another art of Supercoach, because in order to take their score, they will need to replace someone who is not playing in that round of Supercoach. Now, the easy way to replace someone to find someone who's not playing is to own a player from a team who is on the bye. So a team that will not be playing in that round of Supercoach, all you will do is, if you want to take that emergency score, you switch that player from your bench onto field, and then that score will automatically come in. Now, the tricky thing, particularly with the draw this season, is that the buys are quite few and far between. And in fact, there's only 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 buys in 9 rounds. So there's 4 rounds where there are no buys whatsoever. So what that might mean is that there are coaches out there who are purposefully running with a NPR, so a non-playing reserve, a person who's either injured for the entire season, or they're really far away from being in their team's best 11 on their bench, so that they can put that person on field and take advantage of that bench loop.
Yeah, you've done very, very well there, mate. And as I said, guys, it might sound a little bit confusing, but we've got about 6 weeks of podcast before round 1 starts. We'll get your head around it by then. As I said, the Playbook community will help you as well as the season goes on. Now, Maxie, that segues into fixture analysis. Guys, check out the chart at scplaybook.com. It'll make life very easy for you. Bookmark it, save it, set it as your background, your screensaver, whatever you want to do. Maxie, teams with the best draws to target early on with those double game weeks.
Yeah, and look, I think to have a look at the fixture analysis overall from start to finish is really good if you're making a overarching plan. But for your round 1 team, my focus is really, really intently on the first 3 rounds, maybe the first 4. And what that means is that I'm trying to identify the teams that have got the most amount of games during that period of time. So the first team I want to talk about is the Hobart Hurricanes. Now, not only are they the reigning champions, absolutely chock-a-block full of some of the best T20 players in the world, and somehow they've gotten better between the previous season that they won and this, but they will play the double game week in both round 1 and round 3, which means that there are some teams in the competition, some players out there who will only have had 3 opportunities, 3 games by the time round 3 concludes. But there are Hobart Hurricanes players out there who will have played 5 games, which when you think about the whole notion of score involvements is absolutely ridiculous. You need to be considering loading up on these guys. And I think that the basic way to kind of think about this is, would you take a Matt Short having 3 bats, or would you take a Mitch Owen having 5 bats? Like, who's going to score more runs in that time? Who's going to score more Supercoach points? You need to be loading up on Hobart Hurricanes.
Yep, spot on. Hurricanes, the double in round 1, along with the Sydney Six. So these two are going to be the teams to target. The teams in round 2 on the double game week, the Brisbane Heat and the Sydney Thunder. They're guys that you might want to start with 1 or 2 of in your team in preparation for round 2, especially if there's guys that you think are at really good value, or it might be cheapies that you get the double in round 2. So Hurricanes and Sixers, number 1. Heat and Thunder, number 2, and then you go ahead to round 3 where the Hurricanes, as you said, Maxie, they have another double game week, and that's when the Melbourne Stars come into a good run as well. So don't be afraid to include maybe 1 or 2 stars in there, but priority will be the Hurricanes and Sixers, then the Heat and the Thunder. In terms of the buys, you summed it up well, Maxie, but no buys until round 4, and then there's a buy in round 4, 5, 6, 8 and 9, which is really good for these loopholing opportunities as well. It does make it tricky early on in the season, though. Maxie, you've kind of already touched on it, but teams with the bad draws, strikers, renegades, basically avoid. The Scorchers, they don't have a double to round 4 either, so that's probably the other team that you don't want to go near unless, as we said, there's really good cash generation opportunity with a cheapie.
Yeah, absolutely right. And I think even the way that it works in cheapies are that the swings in price rises in break-evens, they kick in straight away. So it's not like NRL where players will get 3 rounds before you'll start to notice a change in their price. These things happen straight away. So nailing in cheapies is good for business. But importantly as well, the cheapie crop this year is absolutely unbelievable. There's a yarn coming on the SC Playbook website about the best options this season, but some of the guys you've got there are certified guns that you can get for a cheapie price, which is absolutely incredible. So I'm very much looking less at draw for my cheapies on the bench and more just at ceiling because I think that there's a lot of guys who are going to make a lot of money based on the starting price this year. So I just really want to pick the best talent available.
Yep. Guys, break-even's another important one to touch on there in the fundamentals of the game. That is the score that a player needs for the corresponding round to either make cash or drop cash. So, there might be a player who has scored really, really well one week and they're really cheap, which means inevitably they're going to go up and they might have a really low break-even. So you get those players, you bank cash in your squad. On the flip side, there might be a gun player. Let's say you start with Glenn Maxwell and he has 2 stinkers to start it. He's set to drop a bunch of cash. You might have to offload him at the risk of your squad value dropping too much. Break evens, all this chat, guys, across the preseason. You'll have your head around it if you don't already. Now, guys, long-term partners of SC Playbook, Mortgage Choice, Cronulla, Sutherland, and Wollongong are back, Kiwi there, back on deck for the BBL 15 campaign. So if you're looking to get into the housing market for the first time, you've got no idea where to start, the answer is Mortgage Choice SCW. Even if it's a plan further down the track, get the convo started to find out where you're at and how you can make that dream of owning a home a reality. You might think you're 5 years away from getting in on the action of home buying. However, in reality, you might be able to buy one right now. You won't know that, though, until you get in contact and have a chat with Paddy and his team. Best of all, it is completely free of charge because you listen to this podcast. Simply mention SC Playbook when you get in touch and you get a free consult worth $129. To get in touch, hit them up on Instagram at mortgagechoice_SCW or give them a buzz on 02 9521 1611. Now, Maxie, before we do wrap it up for the Week 1 podcast, let's talk a bit of player action. The round 1 must-haves. Of course, as I said before, we're going to be looking at Hurricanes and Sydney Sixers on that double game week to kick it off. Who are the players there that you just go, yep, locked and loaded into my team, and why is it Mitch Owen?
Good question, mate. Well, I think the main thing you'll notice between last season's podcast is I've made a very big effort to learn his first name. It's always hard when someone starts as a cheapie. You sort of, you've got to show them a little bit of that disrespect and keep them honest. But no, Mitch Owen, I think, is certifiably an absolute weapon. Last season, he did it all with the bat. We all saw that huge century that he scored in the Big Bash final as well, which was absolutely amazing. Took his club to their first ever title, which as a junior of Tasmanian cricket is the dream for him. The thing that is the huge watch on him that everyone's going to talk about is the fact that he, in the off-season, has been bowling more than he ever has in the Big Bash, to the point where he went over to Major League Cricket in America. He was player of the tournament in that series. And he took 12 wickets. At a really respectable average of 14 with a decent pumping rate too. So if he can add another string to his bow to go on top of the 70 average that he had, it's pretty much a batter only and is a guy who fields in hotspots, then dearie me, you're talking about a guy who is probably going to be a season hold. So I think he's number one. But looking across their squad, they've got really good options. And I think what I like about the Hobart Hurricanes is that a lot of their roles are very rusted on. And when I talk about roles, very specifically within a team, what I always want to look for are the death bowlers. So who's going to bowl the party overs between 16 and 20, or who's going to bowl the power play overs up front, which is where traditionally and statistically we know that more wickets are falling, particularly in the first innings if the team's bowling. Or we're looking for batters in the top three, maybe number four if you're lucky, but generally in the top three. And that just really comes down to opportunity and more opportunities to score runs in games. Hobart have got a pretty settled squad coming into this team, and there's some reasonably affordable guys that I like. So another is Nathan Ellis. He will absolutely be one of the best death bowlers in the competition for another season. He's about 153.9K. I think he's a potential captain option for round 1 too, where I really like. Chris Jordan will bat at number 7 and bowl death as well alongside Ellis, and he comes in at an incredibly affordable $105,000. A guy that I absolutely love, he's a little bit of a fallen gun, but I've got him in my wicketkeeper spot to start this season, is Ben McDermott, and I strongly recommend people take a big, hard think about putting him in as well. He's going to bat anywhere within that top 5, but potentially as high as number 3 off the back of the news that Weatherald is into the test squad. And a guy that I know that we're going to spend a lot of preseason just fascinating over, because what he did in his own country's domestic tournament was absolute Supercoach drool-worthy stuff. I was going to say a rude word than that, but I'm going to say that. Rehan Ahmed, the Englishman, now he is a bat bowl. He comes in at $117,500. In the English domestic T20 tournament, he was batting at number 3, scoring a lot of runs at a good clip, but he's actually a leg spin bowler, and that's his primary craft. So if you've got a guy who can bat in the top 3 and bowl 4 overs, sign me up. So I've got him in for now in one of my batter spots, and if he does make that 11, particularly if he's batting high, in the order, then you got to lock him in.
But, mate, so your predicted teams are up on the SC Playbook website. I'm going through them. Rehan Ahmed in the reserves in 14, yet he's in your Supercoach team. Are you throwing a curly one, a bit of a smokescreen at the faithful SC Playbook followers out there? Talk to us.
Certainly not. And if you go into the analysis and not the team, you'll see the huge mental debate that I had between myself over him, Rashad Hussain, and Jake Weatherald as well. Now, the Weatherald dilemma of him being most likely unavailable for the Big Bash while he is with the Australian Test team for the Ashes, it does open up another possibility, another spot at the top of the order, which he could fill. So I'm certainly warming to him. But for me, one thing I think you can always do in your draft team is have placeholders in there. I really want him. If he's named, I will pick him. But if he's not named, because there is a chance that he won't be, then I know that I'll have $117,000, which is enough money for me to find a good piece of talent somewhere else in that Hobart squad.
Yeah, so for me in that side, Mitchell Owen, obviously a must. Nathan Ellis, I don't think there are any other musts as it stands. I think I'll be paying up for Nathan Ellis, reason being that they have a lot of bowling options. And you mentioned Ahmed there, and Hussain, and Jackson Bird is another one who might figure at some stage as well. Currently not in your predicted 11, Maxi, but Nathan Ellis, he's the one that we know he'll be there every week. There'll be no rotation with him, barring obviously any injury niggles. He'll bowl his 4 overs, he'll bowl at the death, all these things. So Ellis will be in for me. And then it's just a big watch over the next month because guys like Matty Wade, Ben McDermott, there are a lot of cheapy options. Who's got the best form coming into the season? Mate, the other team there, the Sydney Sixers, our Sydney Sixers. We are avid and diehard followers. You in particular, used to work for them. That's how much you love them. Who are you starting here?
I've got 3 so far. The first guy I've got is Jack Edwards. Again, you don't need to know much about me to know how much I rate him as a talent. But he's bat bowl and only $113,000. I just think that the potential that he has as not only a cricketer but for his role, batting no lower than 6, potentially as high as opening, and getting his 4 overs and bowling a lot of the important ones too. I think his ceiling is massive for Supercoach. Another guy I've got in a bowler slot is Ben Dorcius, who, again, I love him to death. We saw last year how much he rose to prominence as a batter, as a number 7, and as a guy who could come in and finish innings and score those 20 runs at a good clip and get those bonuses as well. The third guy I've got is Sean Abbott. And again, it's a little bit speculative because he did just get named yesterday in the Ashes squad. But if he's playing Big Bash, then I want him. But otherwise, I do know that I can very easily move sideways to Riley Meredith with that and get even more Hobart Hurricanes flavour if I need to remove him.
If you had any say in the Australian Ashes Test squad, you would have Ben Dwarcius in our attack. You'd drop Mitch Stark, and Dwarcius would be the captain of the squad. You love that bloke that much. And the other one, Maxi, you sent through I knew you'd be good. I knew you'd be excited for the cricket season. You sent through your first analysis pieces, your predicted teams, and you're a smart guy. One of the smartest blokes I know, to be fair. And Josh Phillippe, though, I've never seen a bloke butcher a person's last name more than you. And it's a tricky one. Like, I'll let you off the hook in that sense. 1L, double P, and I don't think I've ever seen you spell it right. Anyway, you're doing your predicted teams for it, and I'm editing your article, and you said it, and you got it right. It took, 4 or 5 years, but Maxi's learned how to spell Josh Phillippe's last name. Further down the article, get to the analysis, butchered it. So by the end of the season, Maxi, we'll work on that one.
No promises.
All right, guys, we're just scratching the surface on today's show. As I said, a bit of a 101 lead in the season, things that you can take on board as we go. As we move throughout the preseason with the weekly podcast, we'll touch more on team-by-team previews, the cheapies to target, the guns that are must-haves, all different talking points of the season. But hopefully that scratches the itch and gets you back into Supercoach Big Bash mode. For those of you, speaking of scratching the itch, that need your extra cricket fix throughout the Ashes summer, the Cricketers Playbook podcast, that'll be live from next week, talking cricket through a general lens rather than the Supercoach lens that SC Playbook notoriously does. That's Maxi, myself, and Rando, Random Stats Guy, live from Bloke Studio. So back next week. Check that one out. Maxi, big on return, mate. I know you're excited. Good to have you. Bring on the summer of Supercoach BBL.
Can't wait, mate. Looking forward to continuing to change my team a million times before it starts and letting all the subscribers know about that in the WhatsApp.
Absolutely, mate. Guys, if you're listening on there and you've got mates who are into your Supercoach Big Bash and have listened to Playbook in the past, spread the word. New channels. We are under new Apple, Spotify, YouTube, social medias. So make sure they know about it. Get it out there and we'll get stuck into it. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Have a great week.